Welcome to the Incidentally Reliable podcast. Today, we have a guest that I've been looking forward to for quite some time. Someone who has spent a bulk of his career in some of the most iconic tech companies to have ever come out of India, BookMyShow and most recently Flipkart. We have with us Viraj Patel, who headed engineering at BookMyShow and for about almost 20 years, and then spent about 3.5 years at Flipkart. Pleased to be here.
I'm really pleased to be here.
When we looked at your journey, it was your engineering journey has been pretty much been going parallelly with the journey of the companies that you represented, right? That you've led, and specifically, we'd love to our users would love to learn more about not just your engineering journey, but the journey of the companies that you've worked with, right? You spent almost about 20 years at BookMyShow, which is again started off with a very audacious vision in 2000 of digitizing the ticketing, the movie and the event ticketing industry. We thought that when we were doing the research about BookMyShow and how the business evolved, how the tech evolved at BookMyShow, we realized that there's very little there's very little written or said about the journey of BookMyShow. I personally feel that this company, being an iconic market creator or market leader, deserves a couple of books and deserves like at least a couple of movies or some TV shows. It's not been done, so I thought that we would maybe run this podcast in such a way that we can at least have a historical account of this company that you've spent almost 20 years at, and while we discuss the journey of the business, we can also sort of superimpose your engineering journey with it, and then maybe cover some reliability concepts around that. Yeah. So, Viraj, I think before we even delve into your professional career, would love to learn a little bit about you personally. How did you enter a company like BookMyShow? Maybe just a little background about your journey.
Sure. So I'm a hardcore Mumbaiker, born and brought up in Mumbai. Spent 42 years in Mumbai. 3 years back, I moved to Bangalore. So now I'm a Bangalorean. But throughout my life, I've been a Mumbaiker. And I come from a business family. So my father used to run his own business. He had his own, factory, and we used to, at least since the time I remember, we used to have aluminum die casting, factory, and then from there we moved to machineries for diamond industry. So I think around when I was in 6th standard, for some reason I thought of becoming an Air Force pilot.
Okay.
And I was like, no, I want to be an Air Force pilot. And I actually tried, because there was some military students who used to come to our school. So I kind of, approached them, and they said, but you will not get into it because you already have specs.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, now I can't do this. So what should I do? So I had no idea for a few months. And then they had a introduction of computer course. So they actually called us into the hall and they said, from next year, you will have this course where you have to learn computers.
This was in your 6th standard?
6th standard.
Wow.
So by end of 6th standard, they came up and they presented that, hey, in the school, we are starting this computer course, which will start from next year. But this is just a video presentation. They just put up a film and they showcased, what kind of industry it is. They just wanted...
It was, what year would have been?
End of 80s.
End of 80s?
Yeah.
Okay. And computers had just entered?
Just entered. Okay. And then I convinced my father that, hey, I want to learn more in computers, so let me do some private, classes. So we had a private class not too far from our house, and, they used to teach the basic stuff. So I started with, I think in that time there was something called as WordStar.
Okay.
So something like that. So WordStar and all. So there was no Word, MS Office, and nothing existed that time. So started learning all those things, and Lotus 123, WordStar and all that stuff. And then, graduated from there to programming.
Okay.
And I used to learn that in school as well as I used to learn in the, private classes. And that's the way my whole journey towards computer started. By the time I reached 10th standard, I had a kind of a, argument with my dad. My dad wanted me to get into either civil engineering or mechanical engineering or agriculture engineering. I was like, I don't want to do engineering because it doesn't make sense. I want to get into computers. I'll do, BCom, which is like, side education for me. And I will focus on learning in the private classes, because in the, official courses which are taught by the colleges, there is not much. They still, teach you COBOL and, Pascal and all that, which is history even at that time. we compromised. He compromised to allow me to do computer engineering, and I compromised to say, okay, I will do engineering. But I just couldn't. I gave up in like first semester of engineering. It was, the thing is, I found is that I already knew a lot more than what was being taught and what was going to be taught me in next 3-4 years.
Yep.
I come from a business background. I never thought of doing a job. So I was like, company kholna hai, kaun check karta hai ki bhai, what's the application and all, it's not there. So I dropped out after my first semester. I dropped out, and since I dropped out, I was like, what to do? So I started teaching programming classes in one of my friends' institutes. He used to run an institute, close to my house. He used to run an institute, and he wanted to start programming classes, but he did not have a tutor for that. Again, after that, I started building application. I remember I was building application for even a dairy farm. There was a guy who was running a dairy farm in Jogeshwari East, and he wanted to kind of he was way ahead of his time. He wanted to kind of have software solution running the dairy operations, and I had built application for that. Then that time this Kaun Banega Crorepati was a big thing.
Yep.
And one of our contact, he said, we want to do this as a
online
as an event.
As an event.
So they were hosting a corporate event, and he wanted to kind of do that. So I just in a couple of days I built that whole interface for Kaun Banega Crorepati, fed in the questions that he had, and gave him the application. And he was a bit impressed, and he said, why don't you actually come and meet some of the places I'm consulting? I said, why not? So, and that's the way I got introduced to the company BigTree Entertainment.
Okay.
And in September of 2000, I actually went there, had my first meeting, and they had certain utilities to be built, mostly to do with reporting. So I did that. And continuously some of the other work used to come. One fine day, they said, okay, we want to build a contact center CRM, and what will you charge? So I just did some basic math, and I said them, this will cost this much. And then there was a company which came up and obviously gave a much ridiculously high price, and the contract went to them.
Oh, okay.
But because it's a company,
of course,
one man guy.
Correct. Makes sense.
So they are like, you're a one man, and this is a CRM. We want it to be, proper solution and all. It's like, fair enough, no problem. And I used to still continue building small utilities for them. But after a few months, they came back saying, hey, that company has screwed up. Our launch is there in 15 days, and they have the product which is nowhere close to ready. So this is a challenge. Can you take it up? I said, yeah, but it will cost a lot more. You want me to squeeze 2 months work in 15 days. So it will cost a lot more.
Yep.
I was like, okay, no problem. I was like, okay. So 15 days non-stop, I was just working there. The only time I was able to sleep is when they were testing the product. So for a few hours, they would test the product, and I would go and sleep. And after a few hours, again, I would wake up and do that. So 15 days, got paid very nicely at that time. And it became a success.
Okay.
And I think that probably is the trigger point where they thought, why not, take this guy on board in the company. So I already had spent about 8-9 months working as a freelancer with them. So the founders, Ashish actually, he said, why don't you join the team? So first I was like reluctant a bit because, I had my own thing going, and I had never thought of doing a job, and I did not even know how it is going to work out and shape up. And in my family, nobody was doing jobs. So I have no idea how. I know, from my experience looking at the neighbors that, you go with a suitcase in the morning and you come back home, and I don't know whether it's something I will enjoy and all that stuff. But eventually I realized that I am already impressed with the founders, the way they work together, the synergy they have. Why not? And what worse can happen? If it doesn't work out, I have to print visiting cards. What else?
Yep.
So I was like, let's do it. And that's the way I just started my journey in April of 2001 with them as an official, employee. So for another year, I kind of worked on the CRM application, which I had already built, and kind of made it much better and easy for operations. So earlier it was just managing contact center, but later on I also managed, operations, which is, after the booking is done, how the operations work and all. So piece by piece, I used to look around at the problem statement, and I used to kind of, work on solving them. And the founders, they used to hardly get involved per se. As far as their funda was very simple, as far as, everybody's progressing, don't do micromanagement.
Yep.
So I used to work on my own. I was the only guy. I used to work on my own, and I used to build application, release it at night, and then look at other problems and work with the other stakeholders and figure out how they do things, what they do. But we used to have this interesting concept of Monday morning meetings where people could just come up with ideas. While, marketing people will come up with marketing idea, business folks will come up with business idea. I used to talk about tech. So I used to always say, we should leverage technology a lot more than what we are doing today, because what we are doing today is just, quota-based booking system, which does not really do well for us, because on weekends we are selling all the quota and customers, we are not able to meet the demand because customers are a lot more.
Yep.
But on weekdays, we are not able to sell our quota also, and we'll end up paying for that. So we need to kind of switch that and make real-time or online ticketing system. Aata kuch nahi tha, but bolne mein, kuch jata nahi hai. So they used to listen, but the focus was always on running the company, which about a year later changed because the investors decided to pull the plug. The whole dot-com bubble was, After Effects came to India.
So this was 2001.
This is 2002. The After Effects actually hit us. Before that, we could hear a lot of dot-coms shutting down. But around the first quarter or second quarter of 2002, it was very clear that we are not going to continue. And everybody was let go, 200 plus employees, and 7 offices were there and all. And that time in Mumbai, we were in Prabhadevi.
Okay.
So everything was closed, but the founders told me, you stay with us. And we will follow the idea that we want to be a tech company.
One question so that our users understand what was the BookMyShow business around that time, right? Maybe in a few words, what was BigTree doing at that time?
So simply put, they had contacts with all the cinemas from where they had 2 rows blocked for them. Some places 1 row, some places 2 rows. And we would have a contact center where customers could call up and people would take the booking. Then there will be a office executive who will run to the cinema, pick up those tickets, come back, package it in the envelope, give it to the courier company, and courier company will deliver the package and collect cash.
Got it.
That was the business model. It was called Go for Ticketing that time, which later on changed to India Tickets, INDYA. And in 2002, it completely was wrapped up.
So for everyone who's watching this, this is how people used to book tickets. This is how millennials used to buy movie tickets, all right? So, and now we'll, I think, just explore how that evolved over the next 25 years, next 20 years.
So after that 2002, period when we actually wrapped up and we came to Bandra in a small garage where we opened up the office, and there were like 3 founders, me, 1 office boy, and a receptionist. That was the whole team, 6 of us. And what we did as a first step is that let's get IT in the industry. That time, cinemas all used to run those paper tickets and, pigeonholes to keep those booklets. And then they would have sheets to mark seats which are sold. And everything was manual process. So we said, let's first us to build, what we wanted to build, which was called BookMyShow eventually. The vision was there, but for us, the important thing is that we need to get the inventory online. We should have access. Anybody should have access to the inventory. So we had to first solve that problem. So what we did is, during our time before that, we got introduced with a company from New Zealand called as Vista Entertainment. And we were talking with them. In that time, the business model was, okay, let's buy the software and give it to cinema halls. But after 2002, we said, no, we'll become a distributor and we'll sell the cinema software in the country. Plus, we'll also be the development partners to customize it for the country. Because for a New Zealand-based company, the rupee value was not as much for them to invest into customization. And New Zealand is not like a IT hub. So they have very limited resources available for them to invest time and energy in that. So we became their first, development partners where we could customize the product so that it can be sold in India region for all the legal requirements. Plus, for them, the other benefit was that the scale at that time was only in India. So we would be the first guys to come up with bugs in the system, which others had never even reached to a level to kind of, experience those bugs. So we used to do that. So double ticketing was one of a big problem that time, where 2 customers would get the same seats. They had never experienced it in any other part of the world. Whereas in India, we would see that because the amount of, booking that used to happen from the box office itself was very high. We could not keep one window. But in those days, if you look at other countries, there was hardly one window to kind of do bookings. So we never had that problem. But in India, multiplexes were booming after 2002. So they used to have multiple windows for the same show. And they used to kind of, try to fight for the same seat. So those kind of problems we started identifying and we started helping them. And while we were doing that, we also started building the bricks and pieces of what we wanted to build for BookMyShow, which is the bridge of a point of sale system and get that to the internet. So we built the web services, which actually took this point of sale system to the internet. And we started testing that as well. So the first true online system was launched for Fame Ad Labs. So that was in Lokhandwala.
What year was this?
This was sometime in 2002, 2003.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the first system of its kind, because before that, everybody, even the online system, were like those quota based, like 2 rows meant for online.
Yep.
But I think it was around sometime in 2003 when Fame Ad Labs launched with that. So before that, Fame Ad Labs had their website, but again, it was quota based. So we worked with their team, which used to build their website, and we provided them all the APIs and all. In those days, APIs didn't really work well because we had to sit and explain what is API. So we gave them, SDKs, libraries basically. And we told them, this is the library, you call this function for this function for this. We gave them the whole flowchart with, decent documentation, and they used to build it. And everything was built on Microsoft Stack. So that's the way we launched the first website. And once that website was launched, it kind of became a big thing. And one by one, all the cinemas, they wanted to kind of, have this. So that helped us kind of, try this out. For next 3 years, we spent heavily investing on, making this platform stable, which was the services stable.
Got it.
To scale it and all that. And for us also, we never had worked on the web technologies. So in B2B world and specifically client-server application, scale is never a challenge. It's always an afterthought, if at all you reach that stage. But in web, we realized that's not supposed to be afterthought. So we spent 3 years. And by end of 2005, that time the biggest traffic was in PVR Koramangala Mall out here in Bangalore. We were able to kind of successfully run the website for like a couple of months.
Okay.
So a lot of things first time we had done there.
I had a question. So while this was happening, were you looking at parallels in, let's say, other countries?
No. India was such a massive market. In fact, if you look at India as a market, there is no other big market as India.
In terms of volume?
In terms of volume, yes.
But if you look at companies like Moviefone, Fandango, right? I think they went to web, they shipped to web much earlier, right?
So the funny thing is that they are more of a ad companies as compared to ticketing companies.
Okay.
They make their money from ads. They don't make their money from ticketing.
Really? Okay.
And while we knew about the business model, we used to kind of, look up to them in terms of a lot of things. We also understood that business model is very different than our business model. We were looking at solving a problem for our customers. That was our focus. For India as a country, what are the problem statements? One is entertainment. While everybody wants it, it's not easily accessible. So where can we help them to ensure that this can be accessed easily? And for that, we used to, more or less all of us were movie buffs. So we used to practically watch, like, my average movie watching at least in my tenure in BookMyShow was like a movie a day. That's the amount of movies I used to watch. So it's something that we used to understand very well, and we wanted to solve that problem. For us, it was not about, building a company which is going to make money and all that. That was the output.
Yep.
That was the benefit or outcome of what we do. But the key thing that we were focusing on was, how do we solve these problems? We used to pick up problems and we used to solve it. We used to pick up another problem and solve it. So we used to, again, ticketing is not like one problem in India. It's the rules and regulations, the law which governs ticketing. After GST, it has changed. But before GST, it was ET department.
Yep.
So ET department is very close to kind of set up like a state. So every state, like Maharashtra has 2 ET departments. One is for Maharashtra and one is for Mumbai. But most of the places, it's like ET department is overlapping with the state. While they have like 70% of the rules which are common, the 30% of the rules are unique. And there are funny and hilarious stories also around it. Like once I was in Noida, I was setting up a cinema, DT cinema. And on the 5th floor, the cinema hall was there. And there was a particular thing that you'd have to take up after the show is over. You have to take a printout, fold the printout. And outside the box office, there is a box. You have to put the printout in the box and turn on the bulb. And I have a inherent, need to know. I have to know if I will do anything, provided I understand the background of it. So when they were doing it, I was like, what is this? Why is it? It's a rule. It's a law.
Okay.
And nobody knew why that law is. But I couldn't let it go. And after doing research, figuring out from the old guys who are like in their late 60s, I got to know is that way before Noida became big, it was more like a small village kind of a setup. And the collector who would come up to figure out how much the sale has happened, he would come on bicycle. For him to come all the way to the cinema is effort. So that bulb, which in that time was more like a lamp, that lamp will tell him that is it worth cycling that 1-2 kilometers to go there or not. Logically makes sense for that time. But the law did not change.
Okay.
And in a mall, on the 5th floor, they still have to do that. So the thing is, once you understand these things, you can work with the lawmakers to kind of help them change that. And BookMyShow, or rather BigTree as a company, has played a lot of role in there. We were always there with the cinema owners to kind of help them, move all these lawmakers to a better way of doing things. And see, for us, it was inherent requirement for us to take the industry to the next level, for us to have all the best possible features. When we launched BookMyShow, it was like, way behind international, levels. But the idea was we should take it and make it a symbol in the world, not only India. And for that, we needed a lot of things, underground things, which are running in the industry had to change. So lot many things like mobile ticketing. Another funny story is that the law states that the customer has to be given a printed ticket, or rather there has to be a printed ticket for a legal entry. But the law did not anywhere say that the ticket has to be in the hand of the customer.
Yeah.
So when you would scan the mobile barcode on the cinema app, there would be actually a ticket printed inside the box office.
Okay.
So that is what we had to do until the lawmakers did not allow us to do mobile ticketing.
Okay.
So we used to find all these creative ways because we used to understand the legalities and rules and regulations behind it. So the business folks, the cinema guys, the founders and the tech guys, all of us used to work together. And that was one very important thing of the way the culture was also created in BookMyShow. Everybody used to come and, provide their best. And that's the way we used to kind of, get some of the best solutions that could possibly be there. So for us, it was very important to move the industry. And if we don't move the industry, then we are stuck.
Yep.
And when I say we are stuck, our vision of building BookMyShow is stuck.
So we are in 2005 now, right? And then what did you see, let's say, in the next 5 years? What was the vision for the next 5 to 10 years?
So in 2005, one of the big change that happened is that I personally moved my focus, because till this time, my focus was always how to take the cinema industry and work on the cinema industry, introduce technologies in the cinema industry. We got a team in place, and my focus moved from there to actually building BookMyShow. But that time in 2006 or first quarter of 2006, we did not know which direction to go.
Okay.
Web was still not a big thing.
Yep.
So we decided to take two parts. While contact center was a big thing, and contact centers were being run by BigTree for all the cinema chains, we decided that my boss, which was Parikshit, he would focus a lot more on contact center, and I will focus a lot more on building on web.
Okay.
And see how things go forward. So that's the way we started, and we had already the technologies available for contact center operations.
Was it, from a strategic standpoint, were you hedging your bets? Did you have an idea of where web would end up, which is pretty much everywhere now?
No clue.
Okay. In 2006, you had...
See, we knew that web is the next big thing. How much it is going to spread, how big it is going to be, how commerce is, because commerce was a big thing. For us, it was commerce. For us, it was not like, building knowledge system or building, social media or something like that. For us, it was more like commerce. And for the commerce, it's not just how web evolves, it's also the consumers, the finance industry, everything has to evolve.
Yep.
But we said it's worth a try. And honestly speaking, see, when you're small, you don't really have much to lose. And unless and until you don't challenge the status quo, you don't really know and figure out what things are going to happen. So we said, let's try this out.
Okay.
And we built the first web platform, which was Movitel.
Yep.
So go for ticketing to India Tickets to Movitel. And Movitel was a standard web application, which was basically built again on .NET, and all the server-side code and client-side code was all written in one project. But me being from a client-server, background, I didn't really like the way web technologies was stacked together at that time. So when we were moving to the next phase, which was building BookMyShow, after the success of Movitel, I was like, while the way we had figured out the workflow for a customer, the user flow, that will continue, but we will not continue with the way the technology is designed. So moved back to the same idea where we had built a web service to ensure that anybody and everybody in the country can build their own websites. We said we'll build a web service which will be BookMyShow, but a more generic web service, not a web service which is specific to this ticketing software, because we also believe that while today we are the only ticketing software provider, eventually there will be other competition in the market.
Yep.
And from BookMyShow's point of view, we don't want to compete with them. As the cinema software business, we want to compete with them. But as BookMyShow, we don't want to compete. We want to accept everybody.
Yep.
So when we built BookMyShow, we built BookMyShow as a layer on top of the services. But that layer was something which we can expand to connect with others also. So we came up with this whole architectural design pattern, which we used to call internally modular design. And we took it forward and we built web service, which would basically do anything and everything in BookMyShow. And then a UI layer, which was web. And that time, whenever we used to kind of take a break, we had not too many options. We would just pick up our phones and we would play that snake and ladder game, Nokia. But one thing that was interesting, like, why can't we do ticketing there?
On
the Nokia phones.
On the Nokia phones.
So once we launched BookMyShow website, which was August of 2007, by end of the year, it was quite stabilized and things were working. And we said, okay, why not we look at, mobile phones also? And the founders also were like, yeah, we should try out. It's experiment, good experiment.
This was 2000?
End of 2007.
Then after the iPhone was launched?
Yeah, but we had no idea about the iPhone that time.
Okay.
So iPhone was announced in Jan of 2007.
Correct.
We had heard of people talking about, a phone which can play games and this and that, but I had never seen one. Nobody in our team had seen one.
I do remember when Jobs launched iPhone for the first time, right? He was giving the demo of the iPhone, and one of the features that he was demoing was the Safari feature.
Yes.
So the first thing that he opened was the New York Times, and then he was simulating a call with his head of marketing, Phil Schiller, where they're discussing in a call that, hey, let's go for a movie, and then he opens Fandango, and he's booking a ticket over there, right? So it was, you could see it coming.
Yeah, but when we were working on BookMyShow, we had no idea of this.
Okay.
We had not seen any of the videos of Steve Jobs announcing this and all, because in those days there was no YouTube.
Of course.
See, those days all these news would come as a part of some or the other magazine article. And since we are hyper-focused on building BookMyShow, we had no idea of this. But we leveraged that sometime in 2010.
Okay.
But in 2007 end, we said, कुछ तो करते हैं, इसमें कुछ नया करते हैं, web तो बना दिया. So we went back to our investors, TV18. So just before BookMyShow launched, TV18 had invested in us. And they had a team called as Mobile 18.
Okay.
3-4 folks who were building mobile applications for money control and all that.
Correct.
So we worked with them. One of the kid, he was pretty much excited to say, "Kya transactional, chalo karke dikhte." That there was not a single transactional app. We said, "Chalo karte hain." For BookMyShow, we had got integrations of payment gateway where we could accept the card details. And since all the card details are numeric, it's easy to do it on even your Nokia keyboard. So we're like, chalo karte hain, try karte hain. And with only credit card payment option, in fact, that time there was only credit card payment option. We actually launched that also. So I think sometime in May or June of 2008, we launched our Symbian app. In fact, to launch the Symbian app, we had to also build a Play Store.
Yeah.
Not exactly a Play Store, but a website with a link to download, which would, also have a counter and all that information. Plus, we had to give the binaries as per the device.
Yeah.
So we had to do device detection and all that stuff. So exciting times.
Yeah.
Obviously, those things you don't have to do today anymore, but those things we had to do, and we launched for Symbian, Nokia, and then we also added it for other handset, also Motorola and all that. And we saw that there's a decent amount of uptake. Obviously, it was nowhere close to web, but we could see that there is an uptake that is happening in that sense. And we had to do a lot of things ourselves. Like example, our APIs were XML SOAP, which worked well on the web, but when it came to mobile network, that was 2G.
Yeah, slow.
They just couldn't work. We had to actually come up with our own custom API protocol, a text-based API protocol. Where it is like the lightest weight, because we could not even use JSON. While JSON was very new that time, we could not use it because JSON also was bloated like XML.
Yep.
So we came up with our own custom way of emitting text, information and then parsing that text information with certain rules. And we built our own API layer, which was used for many years because it was so efficient that developers were like, they were not ready to quit on it. But eventually we said, no, for the sake of standardization, that problem is gone away after 3G. We said, we'll move out of it. But I think by the time 4G became decently, we had a 4G coverage of decent amount of thing, then the team stopped using that, text API, we used to call it.
Okay.
But we had to do a lot of things to just launch the Symbian app. And then year over year, we used to kind of improvise on that. And in 2009, we decided that now iPhone is the big thing. And iPhone has some benefits, like it has a browser which is as good as your desktop.
Yep.
So let's do something on that.
And then 2009, Android also started coming in, Samsung.
Yeah, but in India, there was neither Android, there was neither iPhone.
Oh.
But we wanted to be the first. And since Ashish was the first guy to get iPhone, and he was super excited about iPhone. He convinced me to buy iPhone, and I bought my first iPhone, which was iPhone 3G, a used one from the Andheri station market. And I was also zapped, and there were apps. There were literally apps for anything and everything at that time. So we were pretty excited कि ये तो करना चाहिए. So, but we did not have any skills in-house because our Symbian apps were built by Mobile 18T. But this time we said, no, we should build it in-house. So one of the, developer, Nadir Mistry, he was like, I don't mind doing it. So for the first time, we bought a Mac.
Okay.
And he learned Objective-C and he built that. It took him time, but by end of 2010, we launched our first iPhone app.
Okay.
Another philosophy was that customers should come, book and go. We don't want customers to spend time on our platform. We want them to come, book and go, which eventually changed because we wanted them to then come, stay, figure out things and, upsell and all that stuff. But the initial philosophy was come, buy, go. We do not have the, resources to manage concurrent traffic. Yep. So for us, it was very clear. Nahi, itna sab nahi karna hai. So certain philosophies we had created before the launch or before the design of BookMyShow sometime in 2005 and 6. And then we started following it. So mobile revolution was a big thing. It was a bet. But it was a big thing for us. And it again came from engineering because engineering guys, they get pretty excited when they see iPhones and all these things. We got pretty excited and we was like, chalo ye karte hain. And the culture was very simple. Do whatever it takes to progress. Don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid to kind of, even screw up. In fact, just for the sake of it, sometime I think in 2014 or so, we did a math. How many experiments we have done and how much of it is successful and failed.
Yeah.
The number that time came was 68% of our experiments were failure.
Okay.
But we were famous for the 32% which was successful.
How did you know what the end user was doing with BookMyShow? At that time, with you, small team.
Oh, we would call them, we would observe them. Like, as I said, we were a movie buff. We used to always be there at the cinema halls. So we would just go and we would just, see how the customers are consuming the product. We would talk to them. That's it.
Okay.
In fact, there was one more policy in BookMyShow is that if you're traveling anywhere in the world, you have to watch movies.
No.
The company will pay for it.
Okay.
You have to watch movies. So whenever I used to travel abroad, I used to actually go and watch movie. Even if I've seen the movie, I will go and watch the movie.
As in, is it just watching a movie or like go through the entire process of the
whole experience? So the idea was that when you're watching movie, you are going to go through the experience.
Yeah.
So you cannot watch movie just without experience. So you go there, you see how the box office operation works, what happens. Like I was in Oman and I realized the first show starts at 2 p.m.
Okay.
Because it's so hot, they start pretty late and they end pretty late.
Okay.
And operationally it is very similar otherwise, but they don't follow Indian model where there's a break in the middle.
Okay.
There is no break in the movie. So people buy food and popcorns and, a snack before the movie. It switches more like a Western culture. Whereas in India, that is not bought before. That is bought during the interval. Now it's a different story. Now people buy it before, during, before leaving. That's a different story. But at least in the times when we were doing research, we used to see that people are only buying during interval. And in fact, we built a lot of technologies for even supporting that.
Yeah.
So if you see, there are cinema halls which are giving you those iPads and, small devices. Again, we worked together to kind of, get those things done.
Okay.
Not that we built everything on our own, but, we used to work with a lot of partners, third-party partners, cinema folks, and, us. Collaborating with, industry is something that we had to do from day one. So that way we were very well connected. But if you look at other startups in the world and, what is happening in US and all, that knowledge only started happening probably after 2015 when, this whole getting together across the globe became a big thing.
Right.
Till 2014, 2015, we had no idea. Like, since the topic is on reliability, we started something called as DevOps, which eventually we realized is very close to SRE. We built something which we thought we have kind of, invented, which we later on realized is Ajax. So a lot of things that we did first, but then we realized that, ye to duniya mein hai
already.
So while it is okay, what we realize also is that we are reinventing the wheel of, building something ground up. So be in touch with the market, be in touch with the, what is happening across the globe and leverage that knowledge wherever it makes sense. So that's something which we started probably after 2015. Before that, we used to work in isolation, sir niche rakh ke do everything, everybody used to focus on some stuff. Jo bhi idea aata tha, we used to just kind of go on building it.
Okay.
So mobile revolution started for us in 2010. And that was my time to exit as a developer. So around 2011, till that time, I used to be a first-class contributor. But later on, obviously, the team was growing. I think by 2010-11, we were about 30-40 people.
In tech.
So people management and all those things also had to be done. Plus, we started hitting scaling challenges, which were not solvable only by building applications better. So we started realizing that we are heavily dependent upon third parties for infra, and they are just doing it for the sake of doing it, and they don't put the heart and soul like the way we do. So I got into hardware, understanding hardware and all. So I moved from application development. I had a decent team. They were managing it. I moved from that to learning about hardware and, how infrastructures and data centers operate and work. But pretty soon realized it's a commodity, thing. It's not going to have a long future. So we outsourced it, but we had gained knowledge. So now, while outsourcing, we used to control the protocols that were there. And, started running DevOps practices. So I think from day one of BookMyShow, whatever DevOps we used to have, since I come from a development background, I never used to do next, finish. I used to automate as much as possible. But that started truly happening from 2010-11. I think there was a first root conf that happened around that time.
Okay.
And I used to just write scripts, either PowerShell scripts or Bash scripts or something like that. And in RootConf, there was a presentation on Ansible. And while that presentation was happening, I was like, wow, there are tools to do this. And I was like, okay, let's get on the back side because khali tha pura. Go back and just start running, start building your Ansible scripts. So that time we used to run about 50 odd virtual machines. And I just, before the time I came back to Mumbai from Bangalore, I kind of got that thing automated to a certain extent.
Okay.
And that was a first step towards kind of, true DevOps. Before that, we used to kind of write scripts, but you had to know which script is to be run where.
Right.
But with Ansible, it doesn't matter. You just run it and it knows where to run what. So the true DevOps journey started from there. And I think around 2011-12, we became hardcore there. And when I say we, that time it was only me. But in 2014, I realized it's now becoming too big for me alone. And I become a point of failure and bottleneck. Like even if I'm on vacation, I need to carry a laptop and I have to be in a place where there's internet.
There's internet,
Which even today is not so easy. In those days, it was very difficult. So I said, no, let's create a team. So we hired people from infra background and all. And unfortunately, that didn't really work out. I think in less than a year, all of them quit because our thought process was more like, ये ऐसे क्यों कर रहे हो? Write a script for that. And they're like, script क्या होता है? So I figured out that it's a mistake and I used to kind of push them, no, you have to think like a developer and you have to build scripts and you have to automate. Like, you want to create 300 servers, तो क्या करोगे? Like 300 times हम लोग next finish करेंगे. That was the model. Because infra guys, they knew that. So he's like, this is not going to work out. And then I said, no, yaar, this is not working out. So I talked to my engineering head. I said, okay, I need 5 people from development background who are interested in, the Linux and all that.
Okay.
So we figured out 4 freshers and one, guy who was mostly working in web development. So these 5 people, I used to work with them and I used to teach them everything about load balancers and networking and data centers, whatever I had learned in, last 5-6 years, I used to teach them. And then I think about 6 months' time, they took over. And when they took over, they started off as a DevOps team. But then we pretty much realized very soon is that we don't need DevOps. We need something which is more like AppOps. And what is AppOps is someone who's responsible for the applications. Not just doing operations, but responsible for applications. And around 2012, we also had another realization is that what monitoring team does is not good enough. We used to have this tools which were like Nagios and all that stuff to monitor our infra. But we used to still go down.
Okay.
So in 2012, we actually just used our founder's credit card and we got a subscription of New Relic.
Okay.
So in those days, I remember there were always New Relic team used to kind of promote the fact that our CEO is of, in the zone because he's writing the next upgrade for New Relic. So it's like, if the company CEO is a developer himself, then, the product will be pretty decent. So let's try it out. And then we realized that, okay, observability is not about looking at your hardware. Observability is looking at the experience.
User.
Experience which matters to the business at the end of the day. And then from there, it should cover every aspect so that you are able to debug it.
Yep.
So with that simple thought process, we said we need to become app ops where the team is responsible. If I look back today, it's very easy to say. In those days, it was very difficult for me to say, but it was responsible for DevOps, it was responsible for SRE, and it was also responsible for enterprise architecture. So they used to influence all the learnings they would get with real, runtime issues. They would influence the architectural decision-making of the team. We didn't have an architecture department. So everybody used to take their own level of ownership at architecture, but at a high level, I used to control it. So that experience of, all the runtime issues, we used to kind of take it back and we used to implement improved architecture and decision-making. And again, at a philosophical level, I never have enforced architectural decision thought processes like design patterns at a high level, but we had a philosophy that, okay, if you have this kind of problem, then this is the pattern you should use. If you have this kind of problem, this is the pattern you should use.
Got it.
And a lot of influence would come from this app ops team. And this team became the core. And then we added incident management team as a subset of this team, where incident management, because you can't expect this team to run everything for 24/7. So we said we need some team which is smarter than the monitoring team, understands business, understands, the mechanics of the industry, and also understands the matrix that the business looks and focuses at, but also are like tech savvy guys.
Yep.
So we found that our contact center is a right place to start with because they already are in touch with the customers. They already know the problems. They already know the business, how it operates, what are the problems and all. And some of the folks were tech savvy.
Okay.
So we said, why don't we move them from there to incident management team?
Oh, okay.
So obviously the name was tech support team, but today the industry-wide name is incident management. So we used to call them tech support. And these guys, they would work with business folks, they would work with operation folks, they would work with marketing, they would work with tech folks, they would work with app ops team, they would work with everyone. And they would operate 24/7 by 365. And the app ops team and this incident management team, this became the secret sauce of BookMyShow.
Okay.
Because see, by the time we implemented this, sometime around 2014, 2015 era, we already were a legacy system. We started building bits and pieces in 2002. While they were next generation at the time they were built, by 2014, they were old school stuff. Like, I remember developers used to come and tell me, sir, XML soap use karte hum abhi bhi. I was like, one, it works.
It works.
Number two, there are 4,000 cinemas. Go and upgrade. Well, 4,000 cinemas mein, if you want to go and upgrade from XML soap to whatever, it will take ages. Plus, you're not the only one who's using those APIs. The whole industry is using those APIs. All your competition is using those APIs. You have to go and convince them to move from XML soap to whatever. So it's not an easy task. And if it ain't broken, why fix it?
Yep.
So till date, I'm sure it still works on XML soap. But at least the last day when I was there in BookMyShow, it was running on XML soap.
Yeah.
So for us, the secret sauce was this whole app ops and incident management. And we evolved a lot. Like incident management was not just responsible for doing incident management. They started with that. But then they were also kind of a owner of a knowledge circle where all this knowledge has to go.
So around this time, I think the mobile penetration was increasing. Is it safe to assume that by 2013, 2014, mobile accounted for most of your transactions, at least ticketing transactions?
A good chunk.
But not over 50%.
See, the thing is, what was a pattern also that we observed is that while mobile made a lot of sense, a lot of people would do booking while being in the office.
So they'll do it on the web.
The reason was they didn't want to face the payment failure on mobiles, which was mostly a problem in those days. Why? Because of the poor network.
Yep.
So 2G and 3G was still not that stable. I think the network stability came only after 4G. So the challenges that people used to face is that risk you lena. Anybody who had a bad experience on mobile because of the network would prefer. And a lot of planning would happen in advance. See, in those days still, people would still plan a little bit in advance. While there was a change in the pattern, we could see that people have stopped doing advance booking and have started looking at movie tickets at last minute. There was a transition period that was going on.
Okay.
So at 2007 era, most of the bookings would happen in advance. But if you look at 2014, 2015, most of the booking would happen at the end, which is just before the show. I think until the teams were truly created, I think the business teams and marketing team was the first team that was created. I think with the launch of BookMyShow, the marketing team was created. So a lot of marketing work was moving. But Ashish himself used to be involved in all the major stuff. From the tech side, I used to help them in terms of, how do you gather the data? How do you, do Google Analytics? How do you do... That time we used to use something called as... for heat mapping, we used to use some tool called as Frog or something.
Okay.
In those days, heat mapping was a big thing.
Okay.
So to understand how people are consuming your product, we used to have this heat mapping implemented on the website, where we would see how people are, consuming the product, how they are, which is like a hot area, which is a cold area. So if there is a hot area and that is below in the screen, which means people are scrolling to do it. So move that thing up. So those kind of, feedback we used to get. So we used to leverage technology as much as possible, work with these departments to kind of figure out what is better. Everybody believed in user experience. Obviously, the terminology was not there at that time, but everybody used to believe in user experience. And whenever we used to sit and talk about things, tech was the least talked about, because always the assumption was, wo ho jayega, wo kar denge. But how do you do this? How do you do that? More from operational side, more from business side, what is going to be about it? Like one of the examples was that Facebook was like a big thing around 2008-9, and they had come up with this Facebook Connect, very, very early stage stuff. So we were like, how do we leverage that? Everybody was kind of, having F Connect button. But from engineering side, we said, but faida kya uska? And founders also said, it's cool to have that button, but how does it solve a problem? But then social media ka tabhi, social networking ka tabhi zamana tha. So some of the folks from engineering come back and said, why don't we use this to understand where your friends are sitting in that show?
Okay.
And help them while buying tickets, help them to buy tickets next to them.
Okay.
So a lot of movie going is a group thing. Now, usually what happens is a group that takes a decision and then, buys a ticket, and then obviously there is somebody who's going to join extra, and then they buy, but then they don't know where they're buying and all that stuff. So the guy who has done the original booking has to do all that stuff. We said, let's look at that as a problem strip. Not a very big one, but let's look at it and see how we can work on that. And we use that F Connect button to kind of understand their graph, relationship graph. And then if I have done a booking and I have kind of made my booking public, then my friends can see.
Okay.
So on the show layout, they can see that there's a friend in this show. So while they're selecting the show, they know that there is some friend in this show. They click there, they get to see, okay, ye friend yahan pe baitha, ye friend yahan pe baitha, so I can buy tickets which is next to them. Okay. So things like this. So while a lot of execution ideas come from engineering, the whole overall thought process is to come from everywhere.
Okay.
Like F Connect was something that marketing came up and said, hona chahiye. How do we do it? Pata nahi, but karna chahiye hame kuch. Engineering came up with their idea, founders came up with their idea, and all these guys got together and they said, acha,
this implement.
And many small such things continuously we have been doing. Like iOS app was more like experiment. Chalo karke dekhte hain. While Symbian was being built, founders were extremely involved, which means that they were interested and invested in that as a future, potential future. We had already seen IVR going down and web coming up. Who's to say that web will not go down and mobile will come up? And who's to say next thing will not come up? We are not going to be the decision makers there. So let's go with the flow. So after Symbian, next evolution for us was iOS. So we looked at iOS and we said, let's invest in iOS. Again, selfish motive, because I have been an iOS user. It happened to be first because, my team was building it. I said, chalo, Apple ka banate hain. Also, maybe Android was not at least a development platform available probably at that time, because we started iOS development in end of 2009 and finished it by end of 2010. So maybe because Android tabhi at least humne itna zyada suna nahi tha. But yeah, Android pretty much came as probably, just a year or so later. And I think by 2011 or 2012, we had an Android platform also. And we soon realized that Android will be more used in India because it's much more economical.
Yep. Did you guys see Netflix, or did you guys track Netflix and the revolution of streaming online, right? Or subscription-based businesses?
So we saw Netflix. In fact, Netflix was distributing DVDs. We also looked at how this business model can work in India. We just didn't really believe that movies will go away, primarily because the crowd has to go to the cinema. If you look at the business model, the way it works is that a content creator makes the maximum money when the movie is in the cinema. Netflix, other mediums, all of them are after that.
Okay.
Because there the thing is not about revenue share. There it is more about, you have made a movie, you take this money and okay, ऊपर जो भी कमाएंगे वो हमारा है. Loss भी हमारा है, profit भी हमारा है. But if you look at last 20 years in the cinema industry, how many flops have happened as compared to 20 years back? 20 years back, there were too many flops.
I see.
As compared to the flops that are happening now. Even if you look at a flop movie, they do a break even. A lot of them do a break even.
Why is that though?
Well, one is because a lot of people have that additional income to invest in watching the movie, which even may not be that great. So that has also helped the industry move to a direction. So a lot of movies are able to make a little bit of money, if not a lot. But loss-making movies are very few. Unless and until there is some, buddy who has made bad decision. And in this industry, taking decision with data is something that came a long back. I think sometime around 2005, the company BigTree also tied up with one of the company which used to collect movie data across the globe. I forget the name of that company, but it was a company which would collect the data from across the globe. And we had done the integration with them to push the data from Indian cinemas also. And that data would help the industry to kind of take decision. What kind of storyline works in which part of the world? What kind of actors are kind of, suited for this kind of role and all that stuff. So which actor is more famous as compared to that? Which actor is able to, give this much of turnover of a movie and all that stuff. So all these data-driven things started happening practically 20 years back in the market.
But within BookMyShow, when did you guys think of data science as something that has to be institutionalized within the product and operations?
So see, I think from the time I know the founders, we used to take gut-based decision if we don't have data. But otherwise, they used to always look at data. Now, when I say data, not data which kind of uses data technologies, but data which is basically something or the other which is known in the industry, some expert kind of, comes up and tells us. So we used to work with a lot of, experts in the market, and we used to take those decisions. Sometimes we used to be a bit more careful. Sometimes we would go ahead and say, "Chalo risk lete hain, dekhte hain kya hota hai." But data technologies, I think, came somewhere in the range of 2012, 2014 era. Somewhere in that range, we had a problem and we wanted to solve. We wanted to move to the next level of our discovery platform where we wanted to personalize for customers. So we had to build certain things. We did not go to the data technologies route. We built things in-house. But so we were one of the first guys to take MongoDB in production in India. And we used to rely heavily on MongoDB, open source, one version. So what we did is we built our personalization engine on top of MongoDB.
Okay.
Basic one. And then we evolved from there. And that was basically the kind of probably the initial team, the pilot team, which said, "Ki acha chalo, we need to invest into data technologies." By 2014, we had a proper, data technologies implemented in BookMyShow and being leveraged and all. But in those days, the data technologies were more like the outside of the core product. And once we had decent control on it, we said it has to become the core of the overall product processing. So the whole product team and engineering team moved towards a model where we get everything real time from, data technologies. So that's the model that we moved. I think by 2016, 2017, we had a decent amount of, success there. But there was a long way to go. So if you see BookMyShow from 2012 onwards, you started seeing personalization. Things which were personalized to you. Today, you will see a lot of stuff is personalized to you because one, we have a plethora of data about most of the users in the country. So it becomes very easy for us.
Okay. The business about think of there being a coexistence of two separate movie experiences. One is in the theater, one is at your home, right? Was there a thinking maybe around 2014, 2015 that, hey, the penetration is getting better, the quality of internet is getting better, everyone's getting phones, right? Was there a sense that, hey, maybe online streaming is probably going to pick up at some point?
So yes, it was going to. I think COVID has kind of, fast-tracked that.
Yeah.
But if you look at 2014, 2015, we knew that it's going to happen eventually somewhere down the line until they fix the business model. See, because if you look at all these, OTT platforms, their business model, if at all the title is doing good, they make money. but the content creators don't make money. So producers, distributors, the actors, they don't make much money, which is a flaw. And that flaw is also in Hollywood. In fact, if you look at all the big movies in Hollywood, they also launch first in cinema halls and then they launch in Netflix and OTT platforms. So until that evolution doesn't happen in the business model itself, it's going to be difficult for them to replace cinema halls. Yes, because there is a new medium, it will eat up some, part of the old medium. But until they don't kind of, have a better offer than the old medium will continue to exist.
Okay.
Till date, the better offer is not there. However, they have added a lot of content which would have never happened in the cinema industry. So that content has been added. If you look at web series, is a big thing.
Yep.
But movies is not as big.
Okay.
As compared. And the investment, making a movie is a huge investment. And one of the problem in OTT platforms is that as a customer, how many OTT platforms will I know?
Yep.
So it becomes difficult for smaller OTT platforms to invest in making a movie. So most of them buy content. And if you're a smaller OTT platform, you will not be the first choice to buy the content. So there's a lot of complexity in the business, way the business happens, which kind of will ensure that cinema halls will continue. The second thing is also that it's an experience. See, if you look at Western world, there are many things like until you don't reach up to a certain age, going to movies is not like a big thing for you. But that's not the case in India. In India, a good chunk of customers are college-going kids.
Yep.
Why? Because the weather doesn't support it. Abroad, the weather is so good that people actually love to kind of spend time outside. It's a cultural thing.
Yep.
They spend time outside. Whereas in India, culturally AC dhundo bhai. It has happened and it has become. Like cinema halls, there used to be a time they used to say AC cinema.
Yeah.
They used to specifically put up the ads. Why? Because they knew that this is a good way to attract customers and that was a success.
Yep.
Malls, a lot of footfall happens in malls just to kind of calm down.
Yeah.
Because the weather is so bad outside. So these reasons, until these things don't change, cinema hall is going to be there. And last but not the least is experience. You look at the way there is a movie from, the big South actors. Man, it's a festival.
Yep.
That experience you will not get at home. No. It's like me saying that until people go to watch a cricket match in stadium, you can watch it for free at home, but you still pay and go through the stress of watching at the stadium.
Yep.
It's the experience. Until people value that experience, stadiums are going to be full. And until people value that experience in cinemas, they are going to continue to be there. There will be new content created specifically for OTT. There will be certain portion of content from cinema halls which will be eaten by OTT. But very rarely, till date, I have seen movie releasing same day on cinema halls as well as OTT. Very rarely. There might be small instances, but 99% of them don't. Whether they are flop or they are not, they run for a couple of weeks. The tenure in the cinema hall has reduced. But it's not become zero. And I don't think, at least in the foreseeable future, it will become zero. Our focus was more towards how do we make incremental benefits so that the industry can move forward. You come up with something radical, you will have to make and wait for the industry to evolve to that radical thought process. You may not be able to survive till that far. But you start with nudges and move the industry from step A to B to C to E. They will eventually move from A to Z. It will take time. But that progressive, nudging is much better than doing something radical.
Yep. Got it. 2015 to 2020, pre-COVID, before you left.
So 2015 actually was a turning point at my personal level.
Okay.
Because I think by that time we had started the agile implementation, transformation, and the team was in place and they were doing a pretty good job. The AppOps team was taking over the whole SRE practices and
it was solid.
It was improving.
Okay.
So I could foresee that it will become solid in a matter of time. So 2015 was the tipping point when they took over from me.
Okay.
But Feb of 2017, they came to me and said, Viraj, you don't need access to firewalls and load balancers and servers. We are removing it because that's the policy you set up. I was like, okay. So I started moving away from, day to day. And, the head of engineering used to take care of, product and business. Product in the sense, working with the product team. He used to collaborate with business pretty well. I used to only get involved in when shit hits the roof kind of a situation. The app ops team and the incident management team were taking care of the issues. By 2016, I remember when we started the incident management process, we had like 2,000 plus pending incidents. And in a matter of 2 years, we literally used to cancel our incident meetings because there were no incidents of that category to kind of work towards.
Right.
And the objective of the incident management team was also very simple. Avoid करना है. Fix तो करोगे, लेकिन उसको avoid करना है. Your focus should be on avoiding the incidents.
Like going back to Ashish's mantra, don't repeat the same mistake.
Exactly. So 2017 or 18, the last thing that I had to do was set up a security team. While from day one, we used to, work on security as a important factor of our day-to-day life. We needed a team now, which can actually, run it as a department. So that is what we did. Again, if you look at all the departments, like, our app ops was run by one of the developer, 5 developers who moved to app ops. Architecture, everybody was looking into it. When we set up a team of 2 people, again, there were developers who moved to architectural team. Security also, we did the same. We had some folks who were third-party folks for security, but the team was created from in-house development team. People who had spent, like Rakesh Nair, who was heading our security, he had spent decent amount of time with us. And first he came in as a web developer, then he moved to backend systems. And he was like, I would like to have this new challenge. So he took over the security charter, and I think that was the last. And I think around by 2018 or 19, I was like, कुछ बचा नहीं है ज़्यादा करने के लिए.
Okay.
And I got into this whole dilemma. I'm not really getting the kick. How do I good words?
Well, did you feel like it's been almost 18 years?
Yeah.
Right. Does it feel like he हो गया है, मतलब कि you brought the business to a certain level?
Unknowingly, our CEO only helped me there.
Okay.
So he used to say this long back, before even BookMyShow was created, is that we should create this company such that people are more excited to come on Monday morning than they are to leave on Friday evening. So that is something which used to always, be in my head. And we used to always ensure that people are excited more to come to office than to leave office. And that's the culture we had created. And people used to love and enjoy that. And that was always a selling point of BookMyShow. But that also, I kind of, in my head, I started asking myself, am I now enjoying going on Monday morning? Because there's not much left for me to do.
Okay.
And I don't want to disturb people because they're already doing a fantastic job.
Yep.
The ball is already rolling. If I start doing that, it will be micromanagement. And 1, I don't like to do it. And 2, they definitely will not like me doing it. So then the small phase of about 6-8 months came, which was boring for me.
Okay.
But this thing came up that, okay, now I'm not excited about going to office on Monday morning. So it's time for me to look out, because then I don't think I'll be adding much value.
Yep.
And I don't want to kind of, be there. It took me a decent amount of time, about 6-8 months to take that decision, but then I eventually took that decision. But the question was then what kind of role I look at. And when I started talking to various people, I realized it's very similar role to what I used to play in BookMyShow that is being offered. But that was not the case with Flipkart.
Yeah.
So in Flipkart, the role was very unique. Basically, they liked what we had done with app ops, and they wanted replicate that in Flipkart.
Okay.
So I was like, this will be more extreme engineering, because obviously Flipkart scale is exponentially higher than BookMyShow scale. So
yep.
I'll be able to leverage my learnings from here to there, but I will also be able to kind of fine tune it for the larger scale.
Yep.
So I was like, this looks something exciting. And because BookMyShow also had a Bangalore office, I used to come to Bangalore. I think since 2010 or 12, we had a BookMyShow Bangalore office, and I used to spend about a week every month or 2 in Bangalore.
Oh, okay.
So I started liking the city. So I was like, if at all I decide to move out of Mumbai, this is the city to be. So I was like, let's give it a shot and let's try it out. And that's the way I moved to Flipkart. And in Flipkart, basically the role was reliability and productivity engineering, which is basically, be responsible for reliability and also productivity. But culturally, the companies were very different, because BookMyShow, at least until I left, I honestly don't know how it is operating now, but at least until I left, it was literally a startup. Like, even after being like a 20-year-old company by then, it was a startup. You literally can think something in the morning and say, ye karna hai. Like, if I want, multi-million-dollar approval, I can just go into the cabin of a founder while he's having lunch and just get it. It was literally like that. And Flipkart obviously is not that way. It was more organized, more structured. It had more processes and all. So the idea of AppOps did not fit in Flipkart because Flipkart already had architectural team. It already, was a matured protocol and process that was happening and much better than what we could have altered. So we said, let's not touch that. So we created SRE team, created incident management team. They already had developer experience team, shaped it up. They already had quality control team, shaped it up. They had a performance engineering team, again, shaped it up. Got all of these, teams together in terms of the vision, strategy, and I think that's about it, which was there for me personally to kind of contribute. Okay. And around this time, a lot of change happened in Indian ecosystem, if you look at, specifically to do with the fintech world.
Okay.
So while I was working on BookMyShow around 2007 till 10, I used to meet a lot of bankers and I was like, यहाँ पे तो बहुत कुछ करने के लिए. But this is not the industry I can ever imagine myself to be in because it's a corporate world. And I had never worked in a corporate world and I'm not designed for that.
Also slow to change.
But if you look at the last decade, it has changed a lot. A lot of things have happened. And this was the time I thought that, it's a good time for me to get into this fintech world.
Yeah.
So
Axis Bank.
Giving it a try in Axis Bank.
Can't finish without like a couple of Warroom stories. So maybe you could just take 2 or 3 of your best downtime experiences and just talk about that.
So see, I will pick up a couple of them which are the turning point for us.
Okay.
So I think one of the early ones was when we launched BookMyShow, we did not understand scale at all. And we never thought about it.
Okay.
While our architecture and all was more flexible for developer, we never really thought of, how agar scale karna to kaise karenge and all that. Basic understanding tha, like build stateless application. I used to hate stateful application,
yep.
But we never really thought about, scale per se. But I think around 2008 onward, which is just about a year after BookMyShow, we started hitting scaling challenges.
Okay.
And as developers usually do, we started fixing them by writing some facade around what we had already built. But 2009, we screwed up bad. There was a 10-hour downtime.
Wow. Okay.
And for 10 hours, completely down BookMyShow. And we just couldn't fix it. After 10 hours, we fixed it. And one thing that we had as a habit is, do a retrospective. Whenever there was an issue, sit together and figure out why it happened, what could possibly be done to change it. And that time we realized is that the shocking thing was, in that 10 hours, we took 9 hours, 50 minutes to identify the problem.
Okay.
And it only took us 10 minutes to fix it once we identified it. And that was a shocker for us. And that was the turning point for us to start our observability journey. Till then, we never used to focus on monitoring. We only used to have logs. Issue hai, log download karo, padho, dekho kya hai. But then we said, ye nahi chalega. So our first investment was in Splunk. And we invested Splunk. We said we need to have, not just logs. We need to start having graphs from the logs. And we started kind of creating graphs on our own. Splunk obviously is a very flexible tool. We started pushing our logs and we started generating graphs and all. Though we did not understand the concept of, I don't think there were concepts of golden matrix and all, but we created our own matrix. We had matrix which were very much related towards errors per cinema and all that stuff.
Yep.
And we used to create graphs and all that stuff on that. And then came Neuralink. And then with other incident, we realized that, infra up rahega, lekin application can still go down. And that used to happen a bit too often. So we said, how do we monitor application? Infra monitoring is already been done by the data center company. So that was another turning point where after the incident, we realized we need to invest in this. And after research, we figured out there's something called as APM. And in those days, there was only Neuralink. There was no other APM. So we just took the contract, we just took the online account. Then after the trial period, we just gave the credit card and we used it for years. Eventually, it became a part and parcel of our day-to-day life. Then came the time when we moved towards AppOps. And AppOps is basically SRE. The big chunk of AppOps is SRE. And our understanding of SRE was very simple, is that a developer is responsible of certain things and the SRE is responsible for certain things. While developers, so from day one, we used to follow this Lego blocks model in terms of our development, process, where anything that is platform related will be built as a Lego block, which everybody else has to consume. And this Lego blocks also extends to certain part of business side as well. Like example, there's a Lego block for seat layout also. So you don't have to rewrite the seat layout, code everywhere. And when I say everywhere, it was, one was BookMyShow platforms, but also we had a lot of third-party integrations. Like when there is IPL, Mumbai Indian wants to have its own website. They don't want it to be a part of BookMyShow only. They want to have their own dedicated website. They are going to market that. They are not going to market BookMyShow.
Yep.
So all these things used to make us do a lot of things parallel. Like though big chunk of customers would come on BookMyShow, a lot of people would market non-BookMyShow, platforms, and then they would come from there to us. So we had to run those platforms also, and depending upon the relation, the business tie-up, we had to provide certain amount of things to them. But payment would only happen on BookMyShow. But before payment, till the last stage also, they could be on the third-party platform. So a lot of things like this would happen. So we had to do a lot of things like that. So we used to build a lot of Lego blocks. Now, because of these Lego blocks, developers' responsibility, there was a very clear line of responsibility ending. It was not vague. Lego blocks onwards, everything underlying is the responsibility of the SRE team. And SRE team, because they were all developers, they would not limit themselves to only platforms. They would go and get themselves involved in a lot many things. So we had heard some story of Facebook having thumbs down only in one place, which is their internal, SRE practices that they follow, where you can do thumbs down. Otherwise, across Facebook, there is no thumbs down. So we heard that story and we said, why don't we also have that thumbs up and thumbs down within engineering? And we used to use Slack that time. Slack was very new and we used to use Slack, and there was a third-party plugin to do thumbs up and thumbs down. And we had to come up with a rule. You cannot consider the thumbs up and thumbs down ka leaderboard. SRE cannot be a part of it. Because when SRE was a part of it, pure leaderboard SRE tha.
Yeah.
So we said that SRE is excluded from this. You cannot have that. So that developers can kind of, work together and collaborate and, give each other thumbs up and thumbs down. So that critical SRE became for BookMyShow. And they would get involved in anything and everything. And that's one of the reasons I would call them as AppOps as SRE++.
Okay.
Because they were not limiting themselves to, oh, we are platform guys and, we are only consulting. They would go. There were times when the SRE folk has gone inside and written code also in the business application. Ye aise karte hain, dekh. Because the mindset was always, how do we make customers' life better? It was never ki ye tera kaam hai, ye mera kaam hai. So that culturally helped us a lot. And while we, picked up things from SRE and, all these error budgeting and all these, processes that are there, this team used to work. So error budget was not like a punishment thing. It was like, this is a line that we cannot, cross. We should not cross. It was considered that way. So the mindset was not taking it negatively. The mindset was like taking it as a signal that, hey, this is something that we need to kind of relook at what we are doing. Otherwise, we are going to start facing consequences. So the whole thing kind of became that way. And that is what actually helped us kind of move around things. Pure startup, so responsibility, some people will wear some hat, some people will somewhere. There would be times where people actually wore even SRE hat because there was no SRE available. And we used to have this protocol also where people used to look up to become a SRE. So we would never hire somebody from outside and say, you become SRE.
Internally.
Only internal people, but they look up for that. It's like a promotion for them.
Oh, nice. Okay.
In fact, there was another thing that we had is that when HR was introduced in the company, they came up and said, we need to have this, designations and all that. In engineering, we had 3 roles. I said, I'm going to live with these 3 roles. Either you're a developer, either you're a lead, or you're the owner. So owner will own a system or subsystem. Lead, there can be multiple leads under a owner, and a lead will have multiple developers. तुम्हारा उसमें क्या title है in terms of designation and all, I don't care. The position you have is because you deserve it. So we had people who had like 15 years of work experience and they were a technology owner. But we had people who were like 6 months in their career and they also were technology owner. Purely because that's the way they have kind of showcased that they can do it. And if you can, your time and gender, nothing matters. We used to give them the opportunity and they would take it forward. So that way, for us, it became very easy. People never used to talk about titles.
Okay.
They would say, I'm a product owner, I'm a technology owner, I'm a business owner. So that kind of, used to give them, acha, ye owner hai to theek hai, iske saath baat karo. This guy will get my things done. So that thing also helped us a lot. So these kind of things that we used to do, and all these things actually came into existence between 2010 and 2015.
Okay.
And the agile transformation also, what we did was in the Spotify culture model.
Okay.
So Spotify culture was something that, again, I think it was our CEO who came up and said, Viraj, yaar, ye dekhna, ye kya mast hai. So I saw that. He's like, you have to watch this video. You have to watch this video on YouTube. So I saw it. I said, yeah, it makes a lot of sense because if we restructure ourselves, then we will be able to solve the problems that we are looking at solving with agile transformation. So we put those things together. We structured our teams into the Spotify culture, like squad and tribe. And, we also used to run chapters. So if you're like a Node.js expert, you run a Node.js chapter. If you're a MongoDB expert, you run a MongoDB chapter. If you're a guitar expert, you run a guitar guild. So anything that is non-work was called as guild, and anything that was work-related was called chapter. So people kind of, were able to kind of figure them out and fix them in such things. Now, coming back to incidents, it was, I think, the root of all these things. If you go 500 whys, you will see incidents were the key reason. Because I was a very stubborn person. The key reason I started changing is because I was not able to avoid incidents.
Okay.
If somebody would come and say, Viraj, ye aise karte, aise karna chahiye, I was like, no way. I know this, I will do this, full stop. But incidents, when started happening, it started questioning my work. And that I used to take it by heart. And the only way I could fix it is actually work with my team, ensure that we all get together and solve the problem. Because that was the trigger point. One of the first incident, the 10-hour one, I was not the one who figured out what happened. This was the first time in my career it had happened.
Okay.
It was my colleague who figured out what had gone wrong. And it was my code which had gone wrong.
Of course.
The thing is, I used to take my work as my pride. It was my signature. So it kind of started hurting me when we started seeing incidents. And then, because I was a first class, contributor till 2010. So all the incidents that came probably till 2012, most of them I was the reason and cause for it. So the whole transaction system and payment system and consumer member system, everything till 2010, I was the only committer.
Okay.
Very negligible things were committed by others. So that was a tipping point for me as well, where I changed because there were incidents. I was not able to change it, and I started seeing that there are people who are smarter than me also. Till then I used to be like, kaun hai mere se better. But then I realized these are people who are smarter than me also.
Good.
And if we work together, we will have least number of mistakes. So we moved from a model where all decision making was done by me to the model where everybody starts working together and taking decision making. But we never left this point where we take incidents very seriously. Because that was a trigger point for me. That was the first trigger for me. I wanted everybody to continue it as a trigger. And across board, everything that we have done in terms of becoming better, I think 80 to 90% of the credit goes to incidents. We had a saying in BookMyShow, if there's a Khan movie, BookMyShow down jayega.
If there's a Khan movie, BookMyShow down jayega. Okay.
And we took a pledge that 2015, we will change that.
Okay.
So we used to go down with every Khan movie till 2014. That was the pattern.
Okay.
In 2015, we pledged that there was a Shah Rukh Khan movie coming, Dilwale. So 2014, me and founders, we were kind of talking about it, and they were like, downtime to nahi milega. You do whatever it takes to shut it down. In the sense, stop having downtime. Not even planned downtime. We had to redo a good chunk of stuff.
Okay.
So one is from architecture side, we had to redo that. We had a good control over our DevOps practices. So AppOps already, was kind of getting in its shape. So what we did is, one thing that I told my founder is that I'll have to change my whole data center, because the infra design that is there today is not the ideal design I would have wanted, because it was done the time when I did not know infra.
Yep.
And we invested money in it. So we had to live with it for 4-5 years. But now it's coming to end of life. So if we do the new infra, then I can use the benefits of the new architecture in infra side of the world, change the architecture that we are running and the failure points and the weak points in our system, and then we can possibly have zero downtime. In totality, it took us 3 years to come to a stage saying, okay, now we are confident, allow escape.
Achha.
But, avoiding failures, we took about a year.
So that December 2015 was the first Khan movie where
We did not go down at all. Cinemas went down. But again, it created a new problem because now we were taking cinemas down. पहले क्या होता था, BookMyShow down हो जाता था, cinemas को कभी पता नहीं चलता था, they are bottleneck. But now BookMyShow became solid. So we started realizing cinemas are going down. So we had to work with a lot of cinemas for another couple of years
To upgrade it.
to upgrade their infra and their systems and their network and everything.
Yeah.
And then over a period of time, we started understanding what are the problems. We became very good at observability. In fact, we became good at even remote observability of cinema systems and all that.
Okay.
So the good part was that while we used to build softwares, it was only limited to BookMyShow. But when giving help, we had to literally get into networking and lot many things. So that kind of gave us a lot of exposure across board the paradigm of technology, not just engineering where you're building things. And that is one thing that I kind of usually talk about myself, that thanks to BookMyShow, I've got exposed to everything in engineering or rather product building. Not just being an engineer who is kind of I have expertise in coding, baki mujhe pata nahi hai. Not that I'm an expert in all the domains. It's just that I understand enough to kind of stitch things together and make a solution which is much more solid than someone who would come up and say, oh, I'm good at this, but I don't know other things, so I'll have to consult with A, B, C. Everybody will come with their point of view, and then you will have a half-baked solution. So because I understand a lot about security, I understand a lot about infra, I understand a lot about data centers, I understand a lot about networking, understand a lot about architecture, I can come up with solution which is very much relevant for the problem that is in hand. Our most embarrassing downtime was actually a cricket match.
Achha. Okay.
So the problem in movies versus a cricket matches, movies is a lot of concurrency on BookMyShow, but that concurrency is then spread across to cinema halls. And people have option that, acha, ye cinema hall mein nahi mil raha hai, so I can go and buy in another cinema hall.
Yep.
That's not the case with the cricket match. So this is way back. I don't even remember the year. There was a cricket match in Bangalore. And our CEO was on call. Means we had gone down. Some cricketer who now that time was managing the Bangalore thing. He was on call with our CEO, and it was an embarrassing situation because every time we used to open the ticketing, systems would go down. And that was purely because of concurrency. I think it was, I don't remember India versus, but some other big team. Literally, it was an embarrassing situation because we were just not able to run the box office, or not the box office, the online ticketing. And that was a very embarrassing setup, and it went on for a day.
But the match was already over by then, right?
No. This was advance booking.
Advance booking. Okay.
Advance booking. Before the match started, but we are just not. So we started in the morning and we are just not able to keep it up. By night, we realized we will not be able to do this. And what we had done is we had built a brand new system for non-movies ticketing. See, till this time, I think it was around 2010-11, we had all our ticketing system built for movies, which we were leveraging for non-movies. But parallelly, we had started building things for non-movies because non-movies, the concurrency pattern is different than movies.
Correct.
So we knew this, and we had started building this a couple of years before, but it was never in production. We used to only test it out for very small events. And we had to straight away test it out for the biggest event, which is this match, which was not being able to be handled by the movies platform. And that was a very embarrassing incident. But thankfully, overnight, we decided to switch from the old system to the new system. And the second day, it worked.
It worked, okay.
It worked.
Lovely.
But the first day, it was a nightmare. And Ashish was in my room, just walking in my room, talking with, I think, Srinath. He was trying to convince him and all. It was very embarrassing.
Okay. Okay. It ended well.
It ended well.
Yeah.
But that also kind of, another thing that, taught us that if something is working,
don't mess with it.
You don't need to fix it. But if it has a potential to break in the future, start working towards it.
Start working.
So in the start, when I said, if it ain't broken, why fix it? It's only a half part of it. That was our understanding before we, learned that if you don't do fixing proactively, you will get into a situation where you will become irrelevant.
Yeah, were there, so after all the systems came in place, after you were even sure about the overall reliability, right? Were there times or were there like certain releases where you were a little fearful ki yaar,
होते रहता था.
what scenario? So apart from a Khan movie?
There is this film festival that happens in Mumbai. So Mami as an event was happening, and we had done Mami previously. So nobody took it very seriously. There was a team which was working, a Bangalore-based team which was working, and there was a logical issue where the developer, while building a new feature, inserted that logical issue, and he took Redis down for like 800 to 1,000 concurrent users.
Wow. Shit, okay. We're transacting.
Yeah, but 800 to 1,000, which is like, like it's something that nobody in engineering would even look at.
Yep.
And that was another incident that kind of taught us that you're building new features and functionality, you have to follow the philosophies which are put in line. This developer went ahead and built on his own because he did not have the time. Because Mami is a very specific event. It happens once in a year. So the requirements kind of, came in a little late, or rather the changes came in a little late. So this guy just did a quick fix because the event was going to launch. And for first 2-3 days, we were having difficult time in the morning.
Okay.
We finished the first day, but second day we fixed it and put the patch, which fixed up to a certain level, but then required a third day to finally close the issue. But after 2015, we did not have any platform level issues.
Okay.
That is something that was taken care by, the whole practices that we implemented with AppOps and incident management and all that. That platform level issues became zero. But because we do a lot of custom development, for certain events, that continues to happen.
Okay.
So you cannot ever say, it will never happen unless and until you stop doing additional stuff.
So it's basically the custom development. Would that to last minute stuff, right? So if there are changes.
No. So see, more often it happens at last minute because what happens is if it is not last minute, we do a lot of load testing and all.
Yep.
But the probability of happening at last minute is higher because you then have to skip certain protocols. Like you have to go live, so you have to go with leap of faith that ye chalega.
Correct.
But otherwise, we used to do kind of, anything that is important and critical and anything that needs to be tested, we used to kind of get it tested. So our quality team, we used to have manual quality processes, but they used to take care of it in terms of, testing.
Okay.
So the one experience I take whenever I want to look at the movie going experience in terms of ticketing is when I bought the ticket from PVR kiosk. I was not the first guy to buy it in terms of the actual ticket. With testing and all, I was the first guy to do it a lot of many times. But when we opened it up for the customer, I was just standing there and customers were coming. Some of them, they, were like, what is this and all. And we used to tell them, okay, this is the thing and all. So we used to, for first day, we had people there helping them in terms of what is to be done. But it was an unmanned kiosk. But just because nobody knew what is kiosk, we had to kind of, help them there. But then when I went and I bought the first ticket, I was like, it was like a proud moment. It was like, life mein kuch to kar rahe.
Some people call it testing in production though. So Viraj, I think there is so much that we can just talk about. But now that you're transitioning into an entirely brand new, exciting fintech domain, like you said, there'll be plenty for you to learn, and we would love to have you back in a couple of months. Hopefully, I think by then you would understand the market even better.
Yes.
And we'd love to have a chat about reliability challenges in the fintech market and just your general outlook on fintech in India and globally.
Definitely.
And thank you so much for joining us today. This has been absolutely a
pleasure
experience for us.